Hey everyone, welcome back. You know how there's always that saying floating around, fake it till you make it? Well, today we're going to tackle whether that actually holds up in the coding world.
Ooh, yeah, I've heard that one thrown around a lot.
Right, it's like this tempting shortcut, but we're going to see if it really leads to anything solid, especially when it comes to building software.
Because, it's not like other fields where you can maybe smooth talk your way through. Code's pretty unforgiving.
Totally. We've got a bunch of articles and case studies here, and it seems like faking it in coding is kind of like, well, imagine trying to bake a cake, but you pretend you put in the ingredients. You can't just fake a fluffy cake,
Exactly. It either rises or it flops, right?
right?
And code's the same. It either works or it doesn't.
No amount of pretending can convince a compiler to ignore an error.
Nope, no way. And one of the sources here had this perfect example, a function called add numbers. Sounds simple enough, yeah?
Yeah, like
Mhm.
adding two and two together, what could go wrong?
Well, at first glance, it works perfectly fine for numbers. But then they tried throwing in some text strings. Instead of adding, it just mashed them together, created this weird, jumbled mess.
So it's like instead of 2 plus 2 equals 4, it's like apple plus orange equals a orange.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where things get tricky. You need a deep understanding of how data types and functions actually work. Otherwise, you get these unexpected results that can cause all sorts of problems later on.
Right, because it might seem like a tiny mistake at first,
Yeah.
but down the line, who knows what kind of chaos it could unleash.
Oh, absolutely. And this whole needing to actually understand things becomes even more important when we talk about debugging.
Debugging every coder's favorite pastime.
Right. Well, there was another example in the source is a function to calculate the average of an array of numbers. It's called calculate average. Pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, seems like it.
So if you give it a normal set of numbers, it works flawlessly. But then they tested it with an empty array,
Yeah.
and boom, it just throws out nan,
Mm.
which basically means not a number.
Ugh. Ah, the dreaded Nan. I've had a few too many run-ins with that myself.
Yeah, it's a classic. And without really understanding how the function is supposed to handle different inputs, debugging that kind of error is a nightmare, like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
So we're seeing that even seemingly basic functions can hide these tricky little gotchas. And if you're just trying to fake your way through, you're going to miss those crucial details.
Exactly. And these are just isolated examples. Imagine building an entire application on a foundation of shaky understanding and shortcuts. That's where we start getting into technical debt territory.
Okay, technical debt. That sounds a little ominous. What exactly does that mean in the coding world?
Think of it like, you know how sometimes you just shove all the clutter in a closet and hope no one opens it?
Oh yeah, definitely guilty of that.
Well, it's kind of like that. It seems like a quick fix in the moment, but over time, all that clutter, all those messy shortcuts, they pile up, and suddenly you've got this code base that's a nightmare to maintain.
And probably full of bugs and security risks, right?
Bingo. It's not just about getting the code to work right now. It's about building it in a way that's sustainable and secure for the long haul. Kind of like making sure your house has a solid foundation, not just a pretty facade.
That's a great analogy. And speaking of security, that's one area where trying to fake it can have some really scary real-world consequences. The sources mention something called SQL injection attacks.
Oh yeah, those are nasty. Imagine a hacker being able to just slip malicious code into a website's input field, like a login form. If the developer hasn't properly secured the code, that injected code can actually manipulate the database behind the scenes.
Wait, so they could potentially steal sensitive data like passwords and credit card information?
Exactly. It's a huge risk. And that's just one example of how faking it in the security realm can have some serious consequences.
Definitely makes you think twice about taking those shortcuts.
For sure. And the sources were really emphasizing that robust security practices require a deep understanding, not just skimming the surface. You can't just slap a Band-Aid on it and hope for the best.
So we're seeing that this whole fake it till you make it thing is not really a recipe for success in coding. In fact, it sounds kind of dangerous. But then what's the alternative? Are we all supposed to be like coding prodigies right from the start?
Oh, no, not at all. Actually, one of the coolest things about the tech world is that it really values genuine curiosity and a willingness to learn, more than just pretending you know everything.
So it's okay to admit you don't know something.
More than okay. It's essential. Think of it this way. Every time you bump into something you don't quite get, it's like a little invitation to explore, to dig a bit deeper and expand what you can do.
I like that, turning those I don't know, moments into like little adventures instead of roadblocks. And actually, some of the sources had some pretty inspiring stories about people who did exactly that.
Yeah, they did. There was this one about Sarah. She had a background in history, believe it or not, but she decided to jump headfirst into coding. And she was totally upfront about being a newbie.
That's so brave. I feel like a lot of people would try to hide that.
Right. But she focused on building those solid foundational skills and documented everything in a portfolio. And guess what? That genuine approach actually landed her a junior developer role.
See? Proof that you don't need to have years of experience to break into tech.
Exactly. It's more about passion and that commitment to learning. Oh, and there was another story about this intern, Alex.
Oh, yeah. What happened with Alex?
So he gets assigned this project that uses a technology he's never even touched before.
Oh, been there?
Right. But instead of panicking and trying to bluff his way through, he's honest with his supervisor, tells them he's eager to learn but needs some guidance.
That takes guts.
It does, but that honesty,
Right.
it not only led to some awesome mentorship and super fast skill development, but it also earned him a ton of respect
Oh.
and a glowing recommendation, of course.
That's so important. Asking for help is not a weakness.
Yeah.
It actually shows strength and that you're committed to doing things the right way.
100%. Oh, and then there was Emma. She was already a developer, but wasn't afraid to speak up in team meetings. Even when the topics got super complex, she just asked those clarifying questions.
Because she wasn't afraid to admit when she didn't understand something fully.
Exactly. And that willingness to acknowledge what she didn't know actually created this awesome culture of collaboration and knowledge sharing on her team.
It's like everyone wins when people are open and honest about what they're learning.
Yeah.
So we're ditching the fake it mindset. But what should we be doing instead? Where do we even begin?
It all starts with building what's called a growth mindset. Instead of seeing what you don't know as like a bad thing, you embrace it as a chance to learn and broaden your horizons. And one of the best ways to do that is by focusing on the fundamentals.
You mean those core concepts, like the building blocks of coding?
Yes. Instead of getting caught up in all the hype around the latest shiny new tools and frameworks, take the time to really master things like algorithms, data structures, and design patterns. Those are the things that underpin all software development. They're like the bedrock.
So it's about building a strong foundation rather than chasing after every trendy new thing that pops up.
Right, exactly. One of the sources used a classic example to show just how important it is to master the fundamentals. The binary search algorithm.
Ooh, binary search. I vaguely remember that from my computer science days. Something about finding a specific value in a list really quickly, right?
You got it. Now, it might seem like a purely academic concept, but understanding binary search goes way beyond just memorizing steps. It's about grasping the logic behind it, how you can actually cut the search space in half with every single step, which lets you find what you're looking for incredibly fast.
Looks pretty slick.
And that same logic can be applied to all sorts of problems, way beyond just searching a list. Things like optimizing database queries or even troubleshooting complex code.
So mastering something like binary search is kind of like having this super powerful mental tool you can use in all kinds of situations.
Exactly. And once you've got those foundational concepts down, the next step is, you guessed it, practice.
Time to fire up the code editor.
Yes. The more you code, the more comfortable and fluent you become. Don't be afraid to play around, make mistakes, and learn from them. One of the sources mentioned personal projects.
Oh yeah, personal projects. I've heard those are great for learning.
They are, because you get to choose something you're actually interested in, so it keeps you motivated. Plus, there's no pressure from deadlines or clients. You're free to experiment and try new things.
It's like a coding playground. What kind of personal projects would you suggest?
Well, it really depends on what you like and what you're hoping to achieve. You could build a simple web application, a mobile game, a data visualization tool. You could even contribute to an open source project.
Contributing to open source, that sounds intimidating, but also really cool.
It is cool. And it's a fantastic way to learn from more experienced developers. You can...
Speaking of learning from others, let's talk about mentorship. Finding someone who can guide you and give you feedback seems super valuable, especially when you're starting out.
Oh, mentorship can be a game changer. Having a mentor can help you avoid common pitfalls, learn best practices. They can give you insights into the industry and even help you navigate all those different career paths in tech.
It's like having a guide in the vast jungle of coding. But how do you even find a mentor? Do they just magically appear?
I wish. No mentorship fairies, unfortunately. But there are tons of ways to connect with potential mentors, networking events, online communities. You could even just reach out to developers you admire on social media.
It never hurts to ask. And again, asking for help isn't a sign of witness. It shows you're proactive, you're eager to learn, and you're serious about improving.
You got it. The best developers are always asking questions, getting feedback, and learning from others. It's a sign of humility and dedication to always getting better.
Now, if you're listening and thinking, okay, all this sounds great, but where can I find resources that support this authentic learning approach? Well, platforms like Algo Academy are doing some really cool things to make learning to code more engaging and effective.
I was just thinking about that. Algo Academy's focus on interactive tutorials, breaking complex algorithms down into manageable chunks, and giving personalized feedback really lines up with everything we've been talking about today.
It's not about memorizing a bunch of facts or copying and pasting code. It's about truly understanding how things work and building the confidence to tackle real-world coding challenges.
And speaking of real-world challenges, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked amidst all the excitement of learning all these new technical skills: building a strong portfolio.
Ah, yes, the portfolio. That collection of projects and experiences that show off your skills and make you stand out from the crowd. Why is it so crucial in the tech world?
Because in tech, actions speak louder than words. A portfolio that demonstrates your ability to actually apply your knowledge to real-world projects. That's gold. It's way more valuable than just listing skills on a resume. It's like tangible proof of what you can do, and it shows your passion for coding.
So it's not just about what you know, but what you can do with that knowledge. What kind of projects should people include in their portfolios?
It depends on your interests and the kind of roles you're going for. But a good portfolio showcases a range of skills and projects. It should highlight your ability to solve problems, work with different technologies, and deliver real results. Things you can point to and say, I built this.
So we've covered a lot today. It's pretty clear that faking it is not a sustainable strategy in the coding world. Instead, success is about embracing a growth mindset, mastering those fundamentals, practicing consistently, finding mentors, and building a portfolio that reflects your true skills and passion.
Absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination. And embracing that journey with honesty and a thirst for knowledge will ultimately lead to a far more fulfilling and sustainable success.
Love that. And before we wrap things up, I feel like you might have one of those thought-provoking questions up your sleeve.
Well, as we conclude this deep dive into the world of coding and faking it, I'd like you to think about this. What's one small step you can take today to move away from that fake it mentality and embrace genuine learning in your coding journey? It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It could be spending 15 minutes looking into a new algorithm or signing up for a coding challenge online.
Yeah. Or even just admitting to yourself that you don't understand something yet, but you're going to figure it out. That shift in mindset from trying to seem like you know it all to embracing the learning process, that's where real growth starts.
Exactly. And remember, the coding community is incredibly supportive. There are tons of online forums, meetups, open source projects. You can connect with other learners, ask questions, get help from more experienced developers. It's like having this global network of coding buddies cheering you on.
Love that image. And don't forget about teaching what you learn to others, too.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Mm.
Explaining a concept to someone else forces you to really understand it yourself, and sometimes it even helps you discover things you hadn't even thought of before.
So everyone wins. You help others learn, and you deepen your own understanding. And as you keep going on this coding journey, don't forget to celebrate your wins, no matter how big or small.
Absolutely. Whether you finally debugged that pesky piece of code, completed a personal project, or landed that dream job, take a moment to acknowledge how far you've come.
So important. It's so easy to get caught up in chasing the next goal that we forget to appreciate all the amazing progress we've already made. So cheers to all those coding victories, no matter how big or small.
Cheers to that. And remember, every coding expert out there was once a beginner. It's that passion, that perseverance, the willingness to learn and truly love the craft that makes all the difference. So embrace the journey, stay curious, and never stop coding.
I love that. I think that's the perfect way to wrap up this deep dive. We've talked about a lot, from debunking that fake it till you make it myth to really emphasizing how important authenticity, continuous learning, and building a strong portfolio are. But most importantly, I hope everyone listening is feeling inspired, empowered, and ready to jump into the exciting world of coding with honesty, curiosity, and a whole lot of passion.
Happy coding, everyone!
Until next time, keep those keyboards clicking, and remember, we're all on this coding adventure together. It really is a journey, isn't it? And that question you posed has got me thinking. It's like, you don't need to make some massive leap to start being more authentic in your coding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the small steps that add up over time, you know?
Totally. So
Mhm.
maybe I should just spending a few minutes looking into a new algorithm or finally signing up for that coding challenge you've been eyeing.
Or even just taking a second to look at a piece of code and being like, okay, I don't get this yet, but I'm going to figure it out. That right there, that's a huge shift.
It's like giving yourself permission to be a beginner, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, even the most experienced coders, they're still learning new things all the time.
Oh, for sure. And that's what's so great about the coding community. It's full of people who are always willing to help each other out. There are so many online forums, meetups, open source projects. It's amazing.
It's like having this giant support system of coding buddies all over the world.
Exactly. And, one thing that often gets overlooked is the power of teaching others.
Oh yeah, I've heard that's a great way to learn. But how does that work?
Well, when you have to explain something to someone else, it forces you to really understand it yourself. You have to break it down to simpler terms, and sometimes in doing that, you end up discovering new things or seeing things from a different perspective.
So it's a win-win. The person you're teaching learns something, and you solidify your own understanding in the process.
Exactly. And along the way, don't forget to celebrate those milestones, no matter how big or small.
Yes. It's so easy to get caught up in striving for the next goal that we forget to appreciate how far we've come. So let's raise a virtual toast to all those coding victories, big and small, to those aha moments, to conquering those frustrating bugs, to finally launching that project you've been working on forever.
Cheers to that. And remember, every single coding expert out there, they were all beginners once. It's that passion, that perseverance, that love for the craft that makes all the difference. So keep that fire burning, stay curious, and never stop coding.
So well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered so much ground today. We talked about why faking it just doesn't cut it in the coding world. And we dove into how important it is to be authentic, keep learning, and build a portfolio that showcases your real skills and passions. But more than anything, I hope everyone listening feels inspired, empowered, and ready to embrace the amazing world of coding with honesty, curiosity, and a whole lot of passion.
Happy coding, everyone.
Until next time, keep those keyboards clicking. And remember, we're all on this coding adventure together.